The following podcast is intended for an adult audience only. It contains strong language, strong accents, strong opinions, and themes of a sexual nature. So if you're under 18 or difficult to please, this isn't the podcast for you. Welcome to another episode of Varying Degrees, a BDSM podcast. I am Spaceside Burns, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, CoolHand Ads, sponsored by CoolHand Floggers.
I didn't know if you were going to say that or not. It was only a gag. Good evening, Burns. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, very well.
You're looking well, and you're looking well in the, if you don't mind me saying so, in the boat pictures I saw of you recently. At some absolutely stunning work by your rigger, your top, if you don't mind me saying.
Eeyore, aye. She's been doing some great stuff, and it's been great fun. We upgraded our frame recently, so, you know, getting used to that and a few different kind of bits and pieces.
Any workshops?
Plenty of workshops, more than I can mention. I think we need an episode just to discuss workshops, do you know what I mean? So much of it out there, you know, so much of it out there. So if any of our listeners are interested, I think just get on Instagram, get following some rope educators. They're easy enough to find, you know, and a lot of them are doing stuff online.
Well, it's good to hear you've been keeping yourself busy, mate, during lockdown, but lockdown's nearly to an end, and I think that's going to be quite relevant for our guest tonight. Burns, as you're aware, I'm a bit of a munch slut. I occasionally have to travel for work, and about three or so years ago, I was down in the West Country, and I was down there for work, and I needed to stay sane. So I messaged the leader of the local under 35s munch. Not sure if I'd be able to attend because I'm 35, or I was 35, and I'd never attended under 35s before, and I'd only barely heard of them really. So I messaged that organizer of that event, went along, was welcomed, had a really good night, and managed to stay in contact or semi-contact with a few of the people I met that evening. So tonight we're lucky enough to be joined by the person who organises the munch I went to. She is an active member of her local community, organiser of under 35's local munch for herself, a burlesque dancer, which will interest you, and a content creator. So welcome to the show, Miss ViolentMay. I got that right, didn't I? Violent?
Yeah. Hello. So many people, it's Violet, say Violet. No, that's wrong.
It's violent like the punch in the face you get for saying it wrong.
Punching, yeah, not the flower.
So many questions, but where did ViolentMay come from? Did that just come to you? Is it your performing name?
Yeah, it's my performing name. I don't even know how I got it. I think it was like I was walking across Bristol. My parents lived in Bristol. I was visiting them, and there was like actually a flower shop saying like, it was called like Lily Violet Maze or something. And it was like a flower bike stand. And I was like, there's something there, but fuck all of that bullshit. And just changed it ever so slightly. I wanted to do horror-y, messed up burlesque, not pretty cheesecake, classic stuff. And that's how I kind of got my name.
Thank you very much for agreeing to join us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, so much to ask you. So how long have you been involved in your local community, and sort of what drew you to that and to running events?
So it's a very weird setup. I visit Plymouth a lot. Like I went to Plymouth for uni. I live close to Bath, where there isn't really a scene. You've kind of got to go to Bristol, but I still go down to Plymouth a fair bit. Like I've got Crash Base and my girlfriend lives there. So I'm involved in that scene a lot more. It kind of attracted me when I first started going to uni a lot more than the Bristol scene did, because it is much smaller. And back then I was a lot shyer and a lot less confident than I am now. So the idea of going to a munch where there's only like 10 people sometimes versus the Bristol ones where it's like 30 people usually appealed a lot more to me. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. And then I got into running munches myself. We started doing Plymouth University like kinky student kind of thing, one of those unofficial societies you kind of get. But it didn't really work because there wasn't enough of us. It was too small. It was the opposite. It went from it was like 4 of us. And then you also had obviously one mature student who he stood out like a sore thumb. He was like, I feel so awkward myself being here. So we were like, oh, we'll change it to the 35s then. And since then it's kind of just grown and grown. Like some munches we still get like a handful of people. Other munches, I think we've had like upwards of 30 people, which for the Devon and Cornwall scene is a lot.
So essentially that age bracket was selected to actually make the event more inclusive, specifically for the university crowd.
Yeah, like Plymouth has a very big student population for the city. If you visit during summer, you'll be like, where is everyone? Because they've all gone home. And the only people that are left there are Janners, like the local people. The thing that attracted us to under 35s was to kind of expand the age bracket. And it was kind of, when did we start doing the under 35s? I think it was like 2016, I think. And that was kind of when like the under 35s across the whole of the country started to kind of build up. Like the Bristol under 35s had been going on for yonks before us. And I know there was the Exeter under 35s who had only been going for like a year or 2 before us as well. So it felt like the natural kind of progression to have an Exeter under 35s. And I think there's a Cornwall one, which was before us too. So we kind of meet in the middle.
My only ever thought with that is that when you have a group of friends who maybe meet up twice a month, and one of those times is at a munch, or maybe you only meet up once a month, what happens when those friends pass 35? Obviously, that's still your mates. That's still your mates, and they still want to come along to the munch, and they're harmless because they're your mates. But there's a rule, so I don't know.
It's so hard, that's the thing. We haven't really luckily had that yet because we haven't had many people who joined who were at that point. I know one of the Exeter under 35s munch leaders turned 36 a few years ago, and he had to be like, I have carried this pole and time to pass the torch on to someone else. But you still see them out and about. There's the local party, No Mercy Manor. There's a lot of munches. If you don't count the Plymouth scene as the Plymouth scene and you count it as the Cornwall and Devon scene, then you've got loads of munches to go to. Like you could probably do one a week quite easily, so long as you're prepared to travel. It's not like, the London scene where you might be, I don't know how the London scene works, but obviously you could potentially be a few tube stops away. And that's your one a week, versus down in Devon and Cornwall where your one a week will be North Devon, then Plymouth, then going to Liskeard in Cornwall, then going to Exeter, then potentially even travelling up to Somerset, like Taunton way. So long as you've got the transport, you should be okay. But even still, there's lift sharing and things like that. There's a lot of that goes on. Like people are very friendly and will help each other out to get to places if needs be.
I did notice that when I was down there because, when I was travelling with work pre-COVID, I would look at the local scene and events in the town or city I was in, and there was just nothing on in the 2 weeks I was there apart from, local, but I could get to on foot or a short bus journey away, as I didn't have a car with me. I just thought, oh wow, blimey, because we're not London, but between us and a neighbouring town, we could realistically go to 4 events, 4 socials a month, poly games, a couple of munches. In a way, it encourages you to explore more. I'd imagine it encourages you to not fall into a comfort zone.
For sure, but equally well if you are a total introvert like my girlfriend, she's like, I could travel, I could get a lift, or I could just stick to the Plymouth scene, that's fine. Or I've got some friends in the scene who do really do the traveling and really do branch out all over the shop, really. Yeah, it's kind of, you put up those boundaries, I guess, with what you can and can't do with munches, which is kind of what you would say to anyone in any part of the country, whether it's a really big scene like London or a really tiny scene. So yeah, it's kind of what you want to do. Basically, that's kind of top tip with munches. Go to one.
There's a lot of similarities. Like I was at a munch in Birmingham where there was upwards of 60 or 70 people.
Yeah.
Really big. mid on a Wednesday as well, on a midweek munch, or Wednesday, Thursday, their midweek munch. Insane. But nevertheless, I walked in, that many people, there was still cake all over the bar. You know, I don't know, is that a thing where you are? Anyone ever turn up with cake?
Not really. We're always worried about upsetting the venue because of like, oh, why aren't you buying our drinks and foods? I always say we can have cake munches, but we can have them on the hoe, which is like a massive green bit by the sea instead. We're like, you know, swings and roundabouts, and that's something. Another good thing about the Plymouth scene is we've got loads of outdoor spaces, so it can be a really cheap. We can really organise some really cheap bunches as well as doing like the general pub bar-y ones. So I
was going to say, it's interesting that you mentioned the concept of shyness, and I think that's a really important point that you've made, is that you go to as little or as much as you are personally comfortable with. And thank you for saying that, because I think there's quite a few people out there who might have want to go to something, but they're like, oh, I'm not too sure. Or certainly with lockdown, you get a lot of people who kind of have this almost guilt of not doing stuff and feeling like, oh, I'm not reaching out to my pals, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that. And that's okay sometimes, you know.
For sure.
You don't have an obligation to go to an event. You don't have an obligation to get in touch with people. You know, I mean, all right, swings and roundabouts, you know what I mean? But, you know, especially if you were a little, to be honest, if you were a little and there were swings and roundabouts, you'd be right in your heights of glory. A playground munch, this is great. But I think that is really, really important. I think that's really good to hear.
Yeah, and particularly...
You mentioned the difference, you know?
Yeah, particularly with like COVID, it's hard to engage with the community when the community has taken a backseat. It's kind of had to with everyone. Like people have been worried about money. Sorry, they're not going to be in the right frame of mind to be thinking, yes, let's go to a munch. Let's talk about some filth. I'm down for that. It could be, there's obviously childcare, there's, you know, people have lives, and it's also okay to disengage from the scene for whatever reason, whether it be personal, financial, whatever. It's okay to disengage from the scene.
I'd like to ask, what challenges have you faced in running such an event?
So we obviously had some older people from the scene criticising the under 35s because they thought we were running it because we were like, it's a safer, I just actually did air quotes, and I was like, that's not going to work on a podcast, is it? They felt we were doing it because we said it was safer. It's not safer. Predators are going to be anywhere in the scene, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. What we did say, however, like I had to do like a mission statement on the Plymouth under 35, so you can read it on FetLife if you so choose, is that, you know, people who are under 35s are potentially, most probably, I am generalizing here, less experienced than people who are older. That's not always the case, but usually. And then also you're going to have more things in common usually with people around that age. I've seen munches where like you've had a 60-year-old person talking to an 18-year-old and it was like, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Great. How's the weather? Like there was no particular, you know, there was conversation going, but it wasn't anything to do with their interests or their hobbies. Whilst, you know, we at the under 35s, there was someone, I guarantee it, any under 35 munch, you will find someone talking about gaming somewhere. That's kind of the big criticism we've had. The other thing is, I guess we've had some criticism with me being a snowflake. I try to be inclusive. I'm a feminist. I believe in Black Lives Matter. I really want to try and we really do try and promote LGBTQ rights and things like that. And I basically told someone who was deliberately trying to trigger people to shut the fuck up. And he then did some other stuff, basically drama. I'm apparently a drama starter because I call people out on their bullshit, basically. If they're not behaving in a way, that's the big criticism is, unfortunately, as a munch leader, you don't get much out. You know, we're doing this for free because we want a scene, but there's not as much payoff as someone who potentially runs parties or anything like that. You know, we're doing this because we want the space. So we want the space to be like as safe as possible. And when you have got people trying to say black lives don't matter, all lives matter, lads, whatever, then I'm going to tell you to shut fuck up.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing having a difference of opinion, but it's quite another to, as this person that you've described, of just being absolutely rude, you know, disrespectful. There's a difference. I mean, there's been munchies that I've been at, and I've spoken to people who have quite markedly different political views to myself, and I've had a perfectly civil discussion with them. Yeah. And I've found myself chatting about different things entirely and having a great laugh and really enjoying their company, and they enjoying mine, you know. Yeah. And it's when you kind of look at it detached from, as I say, those people who are intentionally setting out to upset people and just think that as a laugh. I mean, all right, they can fuck off, certainly. But
it's that as well, like the criticism you usually get as someone who does run munches is usually from something you either have not done because you didn't know about it, or something you have done and you did act on it, and you did act in what you thought was the best way possible, but then people were like, no, that was too far, how dare you.
Hi.
Well, when you're when you're running an event, you've essentially put your head above the parapet in a way, haven't you? Because if people want to take a swipe at somebody in the community or something, you know, in an active community, it's more than likely going to be somebody who's involved in organising events. And like you say, people that support local events, they don't get anything out of it. And if somebody doesn't like a way an event has been running, why don't they just start their own event? If somebody thinks that their preferences and their views will attract like-minded people that they would want to hang out with, why don't they start their own event? And people can say what they like about the thing is, right, you can then say, well, I'm not going to a games munch because I don't like games. It's exclusionary. You could apply it to every grouping of people. Do you know what I mean? I know it's not the same thing, but if you don't like the people that are attending an event or their views or the things that they get up to, whether it's the theme of the event or their political views, well, start your own event. Have some like-minded people join you and do your own thing.
We do tell people multiple times, like, if you don't like it, there is the door, or you can actually organise your own thing. Like my girlfriend has started running, that's the group, Plymouth Pop-Up Munches on FetLife. The aim of them is for anyone to be like, hey, let's do this. Let's go to the zoo for a day, or let's go and have a picnic at the park, or let's go and watch a film. Something which is off the cuff. Anyone can fucking organise it. That's the point of them. And since we've tried to do that, no one's done anything. It's like, guys, you've missed the point of this.
Yeah, it is kind of difficult though, and I think sometimes people want to get that idea just to start off, and sometimes they just need that bit of encouragement to kind of get started. And that's the thing, I think it's very easy to see a lot of these events as exclusionary when they're not anywhere near as much as people might suggest. You know, you are bringing together people with a shared interest. Now, they might have many other interests which don't overlap, but it's like you're there for a common purpose, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? What would you rather do? Go to an event, right? Purposefully pick out the one person that's there that doesn't match you on, say, political views, favourite films, favourite colour. You know, you turn up in a blue T-shirt, right, I'm going to find the guy with a green T-shirt and start arguing with him, you know. Or, you know, I'll just try and have a nice time. Do you know what I mean? Put aside some of that stuff And unfortunately, some people can't or won't, but as I say, one of the things that I've certainly enjoyed at Munches is that kind of big range. And I suppose maybe that I'm kind of spoiled because when I first started going, there was quite a big range of people, ages and all the rest of it. And this isn't to knock an under 35s Munch, right? Not at all. I think what you're doing is great. And as explained, you've made it more inclusionary within the particular group that you were in. Brilliant stuff. Where we were, it just, not by design, it was just sort of panned out that way. There was this big range. So while obviously you get people meeting up with their friends, be like, right, I'm going to talk to my pals that I know, because we do that. It's just like, right, I feel safe in this. You occasionally had crossover where the people who were less experienced were able to talk to the people who were more experienced, and they're like, right, I'm interested in learning about this, or this is a thing that I'm interested in. So I've seen, just to use the same example of earlier, I've seen younger people talking to people who are quite considerably older and getting tips of places to go, be it an event, be it talking about a workshop they might want to go to, and that's really very useful. And I think what you've done there with the under 35s Munch, expanding it from the kind of the uni age, which tended to be, 18, 19 and all that, but then allowing in some of the more mature students as well, as you've done, and expanded it, it gives that access to that experience and knowledge, and as you said, it allows that kind of progression. And then if they want to progress further or do anything else after that, great. But it gives them the start, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like the older, I was about to do air quotes again, great. The older, like under 35s, or the ones of the upper age bracket, shall we say. We do give advice. Through even before like COVID, we had a Kik chat, and then we moved because we thought Kik would get shut down. So now we're on Discord, and that was before COVID. So we have a few channels where people can obviously ask for advice as well, and as well as Munches. And I think people somehow feel less awkward to be like, can you talk to me about what's the best lube? Like, it's sometimes quite hard to wangle that in a natural conversation whilst online on like a thread on Discord labeled kink advice. It's a lot easier just to type, can you tell me about fisting? Like, it's a lot easier than trying to wangle it into a conversation in a pub.
Absolutely. A question I had, you mentioned Discord earlier. When I'd set up a Discord server for our local community, part of the reason for it was particularly for newer people to stay in contact or get in contact with people they maybe met at a Munch, where things like a WhatsApp group chat might be unsuitable because the newer people might not have somebody's phone number, which obviously you'd need to get an invite to the WhatsApp group and all the rest of it. And whether that's someone's not comfortable in giving it away, or it's just not come up in conversation, or they forgot, or any of that. So Discord kind of seemed the natural progression, even pre-COVID, and then obviously like online Munches and all the rest of it. You mentioned particularly the Discord. How have you found that's, I would say benefited, but even just changed the way you do things?
So with our Discord, it was very similar. Like, we just wanted a place to, while chatting between Munches, we could ask for advice or just ask about each other's day, just get to know each other without it being potentially once a month at a time. See each other for like 2-3 hours. Bye. See you in another month's time. So that's why we set up our Discord as well, very similar to you guys. With how it's changed the scene and benefited us, it's definitely changed it. Like, we've had a few people who've come into the Discord, stayed for a few months, and they were actually really chatty with us, but they just dropped off suddenly and were like, actually, I can't do this anymore and I'm out. And it's like, well, you clearly weren't getting any human interactions. It's very hard to like make more meaningful reactions, like meaningful relationships in some ways in the scene over your screen. What's essentially a chat room basically, and not putting faces to names. Not everyone has obviously face photos online, which is fair enough. To be just chatting with names potentially is weird. So we've seen some people who've just completely, who have done the thing, been like, not for me, I'm out. And that's that. But we've also seen other people who have really benefited from, like particularly our Shire members. They've loved it. They've really enjoyed it. And we've been able to plan how we do things a lot more. I now do like on Discord, like react to the munch you want, which is virtual. Do a smiley face if you want this one, do a sad face if you want this one, and then do like a react to which day would suit you. So we've been able to organize ourselves a bit better, and that's just the virtual munches. For when things do, touch wood, open back up, we'll be able to like follow the same kind of thing of like, which munch would you like to do? React. Which day would suit you best? React. And that would work really well. So yeah, it's kind of benefited us certainly in terms of an organizational point of view with us being munch leaders. But yeah,
leaders is a funny old word, isn't it?
It's so fucking funny. I hate it.
What are you leading? Do you know what I mean? But it's the common term. We didn't coin it. It's
dictators. You will go to the pub.
You've been actively involved, like we're saying, within your local community. Was there a correlation between the BDSM world and your involvement and getting involved in burlesque?
So kinky wise, I was kinky before I got into burlesque, but when I was like kinky from age 18, it was a really great start, as you would expect an 18-year-old to have gotten a relationship with a much older man who was also cheating on his girlfriend. So that was really a good idea from mine. Hindsight is such a powerful tool. So yeah, I was kinky before I got into burlesque. Then at uni, I was joining the scene, going to the munches here and there, and then the Plymouth University Burlesque Society suddenly popped up out of nowhere. It was its first year when I was in my first year, so it was a really small society in contrast to like the Rock Sock, which had 200 plus members. So for when I was all shy and dainty, it suited me a lot better, and I initially joined the Burlesque Society as a confidence thing and a confidence boost. And I was like, oh, maybe I do actually want to take it onto stage. And it definitely tried to get burlesque kink into burlesque to start with. And I was like, oh, maybe I can do some like kinky acts, but it's really hard to do to make it unique enough anyway. So it's just kind of why I just went, and I'll do some more horror-y things as well as trying to make it kinky, but not really. So yeah, there's like a small correlation, but not really.
So you perform under the name we introduced you under, ViolentMay.
Yes.
And sort of where have you been with this? Is this just locally? Is it further afield? Have you travelled around the country at all with it? Or are you predominantly down in the west?
Predominantly down in the southwest, but I will go wherever I am called upon. So long as they are paying me, I will go pretty much. Before, I think the furthest afield I've done is Leicester at the Pie Bar. I've obviously done London. I've also gone to Swansea. That's me being international, but not really, because it's just it's like a 45-minute drive for me. It's not that far at all, like to get over the bridge. So yeah, pretty much anywhere that'll have me. Yeah.
You mentioned being paid. Is this what you would consider your job, or does it covers expenses? It's something that is is this a vocation? How do you view your burlesque dancing?
That is such a good question. Like I do have a muggle job, which is what pays the bills and things like that. For how I see burlesque, obviously it was a confidence thing, but then when you can turn a hobby into something that financially benefits you, may as well. Like when you get to that level, you're like, yes, I would like to be paid actually. And I remember after my first 2 years when people were starting to take a bit more notice of me, but weren't quite giving me the money, I started to get really down on myself. And that's the point when you're like, should I be giving up? Because people want me, but people aren't paying me. What am I doing wrong? And you've just kind of got to get past that point to then get the money, I guess. It sounds really like crude to say. Yeah, it's a hobby, but I financially benefit from it in some ways. I try and get my expenses paid for. I try and get my costumes covered, as well as all my time practicing and things like that. Yeah.
Burns, you've got a bit of an interest in burlesque. Didn't you say that you had a burlesque name lined up for yourself? Should you ever turn pro?
No. It's a short answer. There was talk a while ago around one of the local munches. We were looking at getting an amateur burlesque thing going, and it never quite went anywhere. The idea was that we'd have people doing different kind of burlesque turns, be it if someone wanted to strip or if someone wanted to dance or, you know, any kind of acrobatic stuff. And I think there were a few people who had the idea of doing, you know, some kind of kinky comedy. And I had this idea of like just sort of MCing, you know, it's kind of coming on and, you know, just kind of kink related gags, you know, the kind of I don't do camp, but I occasionally do men, so tie up your boyfriends, lock up your boyfriends, you know, stuff like that. And I had an idea of a fictional drag queen called Rachel Prejudice, but then I thought the joke would kind of wear thin quite quickly, so it kind of disappeared, you know.
Love it.
Well, nobody likes Rachel Prejudice. So, you know, it's not really a market for it. Well, there is a market for it, but wrong kind of market, aye.
What were your influences? Because, you know, a lot of people that get into any sort of performance art look to who has gone before them and what they've done. So, you know, did you have anyone, when you started getting into it, did you have anyone you looked to who influenced you, or at least, if not influenced you, you admired and you thought, you know, that's where I'd like to be?
Definitely, for sure. Like Marnie Scarlett, who performs at Torture Garden, she very much does fetishy, straight up fetish acts, like designs her own latex costumes. She was like stunning on stage, and sometimes like twinges on the horror as well. For me as well, Aurora Galore, like when I first got into burlesque, the burlesque scene in the UK was changing quite massively. It was going into more neo-burlesque, which isn't all the like feathers and rhinestones. It's not so much about that. It's about making characters, and you don't have to perform to 1950s bump and grind kind of that kind of style. Less D20s, more Pussycat Dolls, I guess, like lots of slut dropping or whatever. So Aurora Galore definitely inspired me because she was kind of the front runner to push neo-burlesque into the UK scene. Who else? Marie Devilreaux, whose name I can never say properly. She's stunning and does like loads of horror-based acts. Again, performs at Torture Garden and does like coffin-shaped act and pours blood over herself. It's amazing. But she also does like the classic, kind of more classic 1950s kind of style stuff as well. Recently, another person who we were lucky enough to get on my own show, Cleopatra, she is a fucking badass. But look her up on Instagram, please do. She's amazing, and she is really inspired. She's not been in the scene for very long, but she's incredible and has managed to get into like the top 30 of burlesque dancers of the world. Like there's a voting thing that happens every year. And of course, last but not least, like the person who inspires me most probably is my burlesque mama, my teacher, fantastic Miss Fanny. She's the person who taught me. She does a lot of like comedy based acts and just kind of gave me the confidence and the love and the constructive criticism that I needed, not only to like actually get the fuck on stage, but also with my own show as well. So yeah,
I think that's something that a lot of people don't realise, that, you know, when you look at burlesque, there is a lot of comedy in it. And if you look at the history of burlesque, it went through a phase a little while ago where, you know, it was commonly just seen as a type of stripping, wasn't it? You know, I think it's that perceptions, that false perception that the masses had. I think that's probably shifted a lot with maybe with social media and, you know, society becoming more liberal and, you know, seeing, because I'm looking at Marnie Scarlett right now and absolutely fierce. Awesome.
Yeah.
Really good stuff, really cool stuff. But maybe, you know, more diverse art is more accepted now as well. And perhaps, and it's not, you know, where if we're speaking about a burlesque, I think in the 90s, we'd probably be, and it was you know, we're talking about mainstream aspects of it at the end of the 90s, perhaps we're probably more about feather boas and strippers potentially, you know, but not because that's what it was or that's where it came from, but that was just the more common perception perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's definitely shifting and changing. And as well, like the scene as well, we've got more people of color performing, which is fucking awesome. More LGBTQ people coming onto the stage. There's even like shows such as the Cocoa Butter Club, which is specifically for people of color, like OB people of color can perform on that stage, and the Bit and Peach, which is both London shows. So annoyingly, I can never fucking make them. The Bit and Peach as well is for Asian performers as well. So you've kind of got those two shows, which are, again, front runners for really getting diversity up on the burlesque and cabaret scene. And it's also, the other thing that's quite interesting is as well, like certain regions have preferences. Like a few years ago in the Southwest, just as I was getting into it, of course it was just as I was getting into burlesque, it was all about comedy, and I was doing straight up horror. I was nowhere near comedy. I've only just started to get into like comedy acts myself, performing them. But when I first started in the Southwest, it was all about comedy. That's the thing that people would go get hyped for. However, in the Midlands, it was horror. It was totally horror straight up. Chuck blood down yourself. People go fucking wild. So I know to start with, I was going up to Wolverhampton and the Midlands quite a fair bit, which I think is now why I have a massive soft spot for performing up there.
Burns, you look like you've got something on your mind, buddy.
No, it's just listening with interest. You know, it's just interesting to hear about, and sort of the regional differences. I think that's quite interesting, especially as you said, that it kind of goes in stages, so that it's, you might be just starting off getting into it and think, oh, this is what this is, but then it will change. And it might not be that it's just a natural progression necessarily. It might just be that that's what it was that month, you know, or that year, you know, kind of the trend at the time. And before it was something else, before that and before that and before that. So like you say, I think that kind of highlights the importance of checking out the different scenes as much as you can. I mean, obviously, as you said earlier, you know, travel does limit it, and obviously with COVID that's kind of knocked a lot on the head. But a lot of stuff online. Have you found that there's much in terms of kind of like online burlesque at the minute?
Right now, I feel a bit negative saying it feels like there's almost too much. It sounds really weird to say, like, you've got loads of shows suddenly popping up. And yeah, there's too many things. And also, I mean, personally, I just keep forgetting it's there. And I've done a few here. I've done a few shows, been to a few shows here and there. Personally, with where I am with my burlesque, because for me, it's, you know, mostly a hobby with a bit of a financial gain. I've only performed in like 2-3 online shows personally, because I don't want to take away from performers it is their bread and butter, it is their main source of income. I don't want to take away a space from someone who could potentially actually be really needing that money, when I worked in a muggle job as well. So that's kind of why I've not been performing as much online. However, I have been trying here and there to go to shows online. I've done a few here and there, so yeah.
I've noticed that you've recently been promoting events again on Instagram and FL. Is that right? Have you got something coming up?
Yeah, my baby. Untamed
What a time
Burlesque.
to give birth. What a time to give birth coming out of a pandemic, because the challenges you must be facing at the moment with giving birth to your burlesque baby in the aftermath of a pandemic.
Well, it's luckily like I'm not new to producing Untamed Burlesque because it's been going on for about 2 years in Bath and then technically a year in Plymouth, but we did a few shows before that as well. So I'm not new to perform to like producing. However, I am new like every big people are very cautious, obviously, with buying tickets because it's like one moment the rules could change. You don't know what you're doing with certain ways of how I usually would promote. Well, the venue in Bath, they do a lot of promotion for me, but with how used to be able to promote, which was like with a flyer, which went out to cafes and bars in the area, they can't really do that right now. Like there's no one in cafes and bars to be able to pick up a flyer, and certainly COVID will not let you do that. So
I suppose, is it the venue itself that actually, you don't have to worry about the COVID? I say you don't. From an organisational point of view, do you not have to worry about the COVID too much because the venue has the rules and the systems in place?
Yeah,
and you just
so
have
like
to organise to their
yeah, pretty much like they have to do the COVID rules to the audience. I kind of have to do the COVID rules with the performers. Like backstage and things like that, which is kind of hard when most dressing rooms are titchy. So
you're having to do risk assessments and stuff like that.
I probably should be doing them, but I've just been telling performers I do like a massive, like luckily we were able to do a show in our new Plymouth venue, the Underground, and we managed to do one for a Christmas show. Thank fuck, because this show was meant to happen in September and didn't. And I just sent like a massive email being like, this is what you need to do. This is what you cannot do. This is how you need to get to the stage. You need to travel with a mask on. You can't just walk up onto stage. It felt a bit over the top, but you kind of got to go through those hoops just in case the COVID police turn up.
Do you know anybody who's got a PPE-based act in the works?
No, I've got a plague doctor one, so that's halfway there.
Yeah. That's appropriate at the moment, isn't it? Maybe a bit it's a bit appropriate, maybe a bit unnerving for the audience. But if you walk up with your perfumes and your scents burning, waving that.
Yeah. If they turn around and say there's no sight, I've lost my sense of smell, I can't smell anything, and we're like, you've got COVID, leave. But
on a serious note, there are going to be people who are apprehensive even after the jab's been rolled out and we've been told by that everything's okay. There are going to be people that are right, and everyone has their own risk profile. So people are going to be apprehensive, and that's fine. Some people are going to be confident and have faith in their jab. That's fine. If you want to have faith in whatever you want to have faith in, that's absolutely okay as well. But if there are going to be challenges around the way people interact socially, the way audience interact with you perhaps, do you have much interaction and participation? Is that a big part of what you do? And do you think that that the way people are going to be at events will change for a little while?
I think it depends on the show mostly. Like the Bath show, it's quite a middle class venue in the nicest way possible, so you've got more middle-aged clientele coming and Bath audiences are lovely, but they are very quiet. Like they'll do a gentle yay, whilst other shows like my Plymouth show, it's proper woo, like they go fucking hell for leather. It's a much smaller venue as well than my Bath show in Plymouth, so the fact that people stand as well, like, so you've got that, so people just it's much more audience participation when it's a smaller venue versus Bath, where you can't really do that. I think it just depends on the show pretty much.
How do you come up with new acts in terms of like, do you get inspired, like you do a lot of horror stuff, or do you get inspired by horror movies? Do you have a bad dream and like, oh, that's a good idea? Does it just come from the darkness of your soul?
The darkness of my soul, I guess. I do watch horror movies. Like I was thinking about this one in the shower because I was like, I knew you were going to ask this one. And I was like, where do I pull inspiration from? Like I just get it. And that's that, like, that it just pops into my head, and then I'm stuck with the idea pretty much. Like, I wanted to do a fetishy nurse act, which stuck with me, and then I kind of tried to find a song which was suitable, found one, then I was like, no, this song is shit and I don't like it because it's Marilyn Manson, and that was before the Marilyn Manson fiasco thing. And it was just because I was like, he's really overplayed in Burlesque right now. So I was like, I'll change the song. So that was fun. So yeah, it's just me having an idea and then getting stuck in that idea pretty much and rolling with it until I find a song that I think, oh yeah, that'll work.
That's quite typical of creatives, or when you have an idea, because I mean I would never claim to be creative, but I occasionally make the odd thing. It tends to be you get an idea, it just pops into your head, and it won't go away until you realise it. You need to find a way of realising this idea.
For sure.
Much like when a murderer sort of fixates on a victim and they have to purge that fixation.
Yeah, that like
you have to bring this idea, you have to bring it out. And
yeah, one of the big ones I had, which is an actor really needs to like actually re-perform at some time, because otherwise it's going to go on the chopping block now that I think about it. But I had the idea, I was like, I kind of want to do a classic act, but not a classic act as well. So I was like, I'll do an undead showgirl instead. Well, it starts with me having like a fake brain, which I pull out as well and do that. And it starts with the David Rose stripper song, you know, the da 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 da, before turning into the next bit of music. But I was really struggling to find that last bit of music. And it took me watching The Sopranos and it being that a song at the end being like, that's the song. And having to like find out what this fucking song was to then actually choreograph the whole thing. It's kind of a backwards way of working, I guess. But I am now starting to go the other way and being like, oh, well, I want to do it to this song, or I'll try and work an act around that as well. So,
you know, you usually go for anything, you're constantly refining your creative process, aren't you? Because you will learn things that really worked for you and you will develop them, and you will try other ways of doing things and just keep refining that process. And I suppose different ideas come about in different ways. So you might get a good idea for an ending, for how to finish something. You're like, crikey, I've got to now, to get to that point, I've got to now get to that big finish, or I've now got to make X fit with Y and Z, you know. Burns has done stand-up before, you know, quite a bit in the past. I mean, obviously COVID's taken a bit of a knock on that, and you've written. I mean, have you ever found when approaching stand-up that you get an idea and then you've got to somehow try and make it happen?
I think one of the things that I've found is that sometimes inspiration will strike at odd points. For instance, there was a particular joke that I'd done at a number of shows and I couldn't get it to land. And then someone had said something to me about rejigging the order in which I told the same jokes. So I did that at this one particular show. And while I was on stage telling the joke, it kind of popped up, you know, this is it. This is the way of telling it. So I'd gone from I can't do this joke to, oh, there it is. Why did I not see that before, you know? And it worked really well. So sometimes I think even just revisiting something, and like you say, VaryingDegress, going back to kind of a classic routine and changing it. Okay, you've got the basis of it, but just by shifting it slightly, rejigging it around a bit, you come up with this kind of brand new thing that was near enough staring you in the face already, you know?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So, VaryingDegress, you mentioned earlier about the multitude of burlesque shows online. Do you feel that this has any impact on content creators at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. At the start of the pandemic, there are obviously lots of performers whose main income is burlesque performing, being on stage, who kind of had to go to OnlyFans, obviously, being the major site, doing cam work, and that kind of made me rethink camming as such. I no longer on adult work as a result, because I was like, to be fair, like adult work, the footfall of traffic was becoming less and less, and they were putting more and more restrictions on webcam performers on that site anyway, and I was doing it less and less as well. I was going from like once a week every single Tuesday to once every other week to once a month to when I could be fucking bothered, so it wasn't really even worth it towards the end. So it did kind of make me readjust, and now I only do I do Skype calls still. Yes, people still use Skypes, it's just hoes. And as well, I do like custom content, but you've just got to get in touch with me directly. You're not giving money to scummy websites, you're just giving it money to me.
That's fair. You said you used to be best on a Tuesday. I was going to say, I dare say you've dealt with some see you next Tuesdays.
A little bit, yeah.
But that's the thing with content, well, with cam work, because I know a couple of other people that do cam work, and although you get obviously random people, on a busy night, you also can gain a following and people that will come on, for you, and a loyal following. And, much like anything, if your offering stops or takes a hiatus, people will shop elsewhere, to put it bluntly. Yeah. And that following that you've built up will drop off and disappear.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And the whole illusion of people saying, oh, you get to pick your own hours and it's flexible. Two-way point, you still have to pick your hours. You still have to set a time. It's not completely when you feel like it. If you do want to do it when you feel like it, you probably won't be making much money. So.
I know someone who stays up stupid late to catch the American trade.
Yeah, and I couldn't do that because of muggle job. So yeah, for me, when I started doing cam work, it was just an extra bit of money. What my husband and I call pizza money. It was money which gave us more takeaways, basically, rather than to pay for anything. If we said, the moment we start relying on that money, it never came to it anyway. If it was a case we started to rely on that money for bills, then we drop out, we work out something else. But we never had that problem though. So yeah.
I look at it like business and commerce. You've got an offering, you've got a product, your product is your offering, what it is, how it's packaged and presented. And you can't blame people for doing it. But since the pandemic, either through maybe getting less hours through their muggle job, or because they can't do stage shows anymore, or because bills are mounting or whatever, they think, I can maybe try and do some cam work. And then, but the thing is, it also makes it harder to find offerings of quality with people that are actually putting thought into what they're doing and their package.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to really stand out as well with what you are offering. As someone who is a white, skinny, very straight and cis-passing looking person, I don't have much to offer in the ways of OnlyFans. And I took one look at OnlyFans and was like, that's not the site for me. I've got I know someone who does shoots 5 times a week for OnlyFans and will stay up to make that content, and I'm like, no, that's too much dedication. And that hard work has paid off. I think they're in the top 9% of people in the site, but the amount of time and effort she's had to put into getting there is fucking insane.
So we're looking into platforms at the moment because we want to create a platform for BDSM content videos, but also I'm going to be hopefully doing some workshops soon. So I want to be able to record them and then upload them to a platform where I can, where people can then, who follow me or subscribe, well, not just to me, but to us, we're going to call it quite cheekily, with the same branding you can see on my hoodies. That's CoolHand Floggers, but we're going to call it House of Hands.
Oh, nice.
And we basically we're looking for a platform that we can put both educational and erotic content, not necessarily sexual, but BDSM erotic content on. And it's a real bugger because Patreon is really, really harsh on adult content, and even sex educators have been shut down on there, even though they've selected an over 18s account. The OnlyFans, in a way, looks like the most feasible way to go, practicality, but I don't want it to be on OnlyFans. And that's nothing against people that have OnlyFans accounts and make lots of money, but that doesn't seem like the target audience and
Yeah,
the right
and when
platform for our offering, for what we're trying to build and do. So yeah, so I might even talk with you at a later date about what your opinions and thoughts on certain different platforms are.
sure.
It's tough, isn't it, deciding, you know, how you want to present yourself and what is right for you and how your product or offering might fit into the surroundings.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Like I say, the pandemic made me readjust and realize I don't need to be on adult work anymore because I just wasn't doing it versus how I worked now, which, you know, I'm still getting, even just through FetLife, someone messaging me saying, oh, can I have a custom photo set or can I have a custom video? And that works out much better for me. It's not me sitting down, being made up, potentially sitting for an hour and making a tenner potentially, like because that's the way it was rolling with some nights with adult work. You could sit down in your pants for an hour and earn less than £10 once they've taken their cut. Some nights you would be sitting there for an hour and could earn like 200 quid. So the fact that I'm still getting, you know, pretty much every month someone contacted me saying, can I have XYZ? It works out much better for me. It's that guaranteed money and I'm getting all the money that way, and it's much more time effective as well. Me just bashing out a video in 20 minutes, half an hour, done.
The question, I'm not sure how to kind of phrase it sensitively. I guess it kind of ties in a way to kind of DS dynamics and top bottom and dom and sub and who really holds the power. You've mentioned a number of things about OnlyFans and you mentioned earlier being a feminist. Where do you stand on the issue of empowerment versus commodification as applied to sites like OnlyFans?
Yeah, I think it's down to pretty much, I love that question so fucking much because I've never really thought of it. Like, I guess.
It's always a difficult question, isn't it?
Yeah.
On an interview.
Yeah, like with sex work as a whole, you know, we don't include trafficking. Trafficking is different to sex work when that's a totally different thing. And if you just look at sex work and take away the trafficking, then 9 times out of 10 people are doing it because they want to do it, they want to be empowered, or it could be for other reasons, like they have medical needs and can't really get a job because of those needs. They might just be a total slag, and that's fine too. And they're like, I'm
let me
good
be
at sucking
clear.
some dick.
Let me be clear. I wasn't referring to human trafficking.
Yeah, I know you weren't, but like obviously some people are like, oh, sex work, it's bad, and but it's not. It's, you got to take away that when it comes to digital stuff and the commodification, like, I don't know, man.
Because that's the difficult thing, isn't it? You know, a lot of people say, okay, this is empowering, and I'm using my body and I'm basically earning from it.
Yeah.
But also the other end of it is you've got someone demanding, right, I want this from you. And as long as I am paying the right price, I can get whatever I want. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a case of you've got to set those boundaries like you would in a DNS relationship. You know, you've got to say, I don't do XYZ. When I first started, I was like 23, and I admittedly did look a bit younger and was kind of trying to pose myself more as a sub, and I was getting some very fucking sleazy requests, and I thought, I'm shutting this fucking down now, and immediately changed my look. I went from wearing more, you know, short skirts, kind of, you know, e-girl style stuff, to wearing fishnets, loads of black studs, black lipstick, made myself look like a dom. And that, from then on in, it was kind of how I put myself out online a lot more. I still say I switch, and I do online, but I definitely fit onto the dominant side, the dom side, a lot more, because you get much easier and less sleazy requests that way of a guy saying, can I have Joy jerk off instructions, versus a guy saying, yeah, no.
I find that so interesting though, because you know, you used to dress sort of more subby, and then like I made myself look more like a dom. But then that's based on preconceptions that have obviously been set by men about what looks weak and what looks strong.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going into all that, isn't it? Because it's like, for me, it's like, well, actually, I don't, and maybe it's certainly not because I'm an enlightened individual. But I don't equate a certain look to a sort of a dominant look or a certain look to a submissive look. But a lot of people do, and I can make that on offhand remark still, but looks more dominant or looks more submissive. But it's just that we've conditioned, I don't know, the masses have conditioned ourselves through the generations to go, yeah, that looks submissive and that looks more powerful. Do you know what I mean? It's
definitely, for sure.
Somebody sees the same person on the screen in two different outfits, and they go, that person is dominant, that person is submissive.
Even on stage, like I'm currently doing burlesque teaching as well to get my name out there a little bit more. And I've been discussing it with a few of my students, how if you play with your hair, if you suddenly cover your mouth with your hair, that's a very shy look, versus if you ruffle your hair at the back of your head with your like hands on the back, that suddenly looks really confident and assertive. Like just that subtle change of how you play with your hair.
It's that time, Burns. So, Miss May, ViolentMay, you have got an absolute treat. You are joining us for another episode of the Encyclopedia of Unusual Sexual Practices. It's not right, it's not okay, but it is entertainment. It is a book that I've had sitting in my kink drawer for around 15 years. It served as a bit of a novelty and then gathered dust for maybe nearly a decade. And when we started doing Varying Degrees, a BDSM podcast, it saw the light of day and found a new life. And we've slowly been working through it. And we're on the letter I tonight. So if you're willing to participate, you in?
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay, so I'm going to read out a word. I'm going to pronounce it really badly. Struggle with a Latin breakdown because, listen to me. And then you're going to try and guess what it is. You and Burns are going to try and guess what it is. Okay, so starting us off tonight, we have got infibulation.
Is that something to do with your heart?
Oh, would you like the spelling?
Oh,
It's not going to help me, to be honest.
No, it's pretty simple. It's as it sounds. Infibulation.
My face, I'm like, no.
Well, the in is for inside, and fibulate, that which fastens. So there are your clues. Inside, it's like a crossword. It's like a kink
Buttons,
crossword.
poppers,
No.
like not actual poppers, like.
I was going to say poppers are something quite different.
Yeah, not those
Kink.
ones.
It
The
is
other one.
Unusual sexual practices. Inside, fastening.
Sewing up someone's bum.
Closer than so far. I'll give it to you. Look. Okay. Infibulation is the term that is used for either sewing or fastening of the foreskin over the penis, or sewing the labia minora over the labia major, sewing them together, or sewing the scrotum around the penis. The type of penis infibulation determines whether it prevents full erection or only penetration. Infibulation.
I mean, that's a strong start from that book, isn't it? Really?
It's what happens at when you mix up a fetish party and the Women's Institute meeting.
And actually, it gets quite dark. It gets quite dark because it then talks about sort of practices in certain parts of the world of genital mutilation and stuff like that. So it actually gets pretty dark. But yeah, in that case, I think we should move on. Insufflation. Insufflation. INSUF. Insufflation.
Isn't that like inhaling stuff?
Yeah.
So like we're kind of back to poppers, aren't we?
Close.
Oh, is that like the balloon stuff? Exhaling?
Blowing.
Blowjobs. What?
Not quite.
Just
or blowing air into a person has been done in almost every orifice. The medical profession uses it to revive an asphyxiated person with mouth to resuscitation. So it goes into all aspects of it. It's basically the act of blowing air into somebody, and it can be done sexually through an orifice of your choice. I'm not looking at either one of you particularly there.
Oh dear God.
The next one's a favourite of mine for play, and sort of I nearly said M&S play then. MS.
Well,
MSN.
S&M play. This is not just your kink, this is your M&S kink. It's a favourite of mine for S&M play, interrogation. We're not going to go into that in detail, but you know what interrogation is about. I've got a more interesting sounding one though.
go on.
Inunction.
Nope.
Anybody here know what inunction is?
No, not got a clue.
Yeah, tumbleweeds on that one.
It refers to those who have their body lathered up or rubbed in an oil, then use a partner or object lied against.
Cool.
Oh my God. Americans during the 60s, I don't know how many Americans, I'm assuming only a small number, although they are an odd bunch, so who knows, would have mazzola parties where all participants would have to undress, rub their bodies in oil, and messle or play on plastic sheets. It's dirty bastards. The bathhouses in Bangkok, Thailand that offer similar services. A client has a choice of laying on a lathered air mattress with a lady wiggling on top of him. I'm assuming the client's a him. Or being lathered and laying between two withering women. The lather alleviates friction and produces a sensation that is drastically different from normal skin-to-skin contact. Wow, that's lovely. And that's I.
Well, that's certainly an
All
education.
learned something today.
You absolutely did. So which one of those will you be trying out, guys? Burns?
None of them.
Fair play.
I don't know, maybe.
I'm getting less and less aroused by the encyclopedia of unusual sexual practices as we go on. Maybe I'm becoming desensitized.
Maybe.
But apparently that is a problem. But you would have thought it happened a long time ago for me, to be fair.
Sorry, I'll bring you round. So,
Will you now? Will you bring me up?
So our final recurring section is called Jock-o-naughty, and it's basically a rip-off of Jock-o-naughty for those that haven't been following the podcast and haven't got the joke seconds after it was first told. Anyway, so this is an excerpt from the Bad Sex and Fiction Awards, and they take literary fiction, and every year since 1993 they have taken some bad sex scenes from fiction. So this is from Philip Kerr's Gridiron, the 1995 winner. Quickly, he threw off his own clothes and rolled on top of her, detaching mind from over-eager gnomon and its exquisitely appointed shadowy task. He began to make love to her. When they had finished, they lay under the sheet and watched TV. After a while, Mitch glanced at the gold Rolex Submariner watch on his wrist. I ought to be going, he said. Well, there you go. Tinder hookup in a nutshell, isn't it, really? I looked through this earlier, and I had to look up what gnomon was, and it's basically the bit on a sundial that casts a shadow. So this guy has essentially got a cock that can tell the time, which is quite a thing. So there you go. Philip Kerr.
Amazing.
The 1995 winner of the Bad Sex and Fiction Awards.
Now, I know that erotic is your thing, Burns, but I've got something here that I spotted under the letter I from the Encyclopedia of Unusual Sexual Practices, and it was a wee poem. And I decided not to do that entry for the letter I, but I think it seems as we're on the same sort of vibe and wavelength. I might read you guys a couple of lines from it, and you can see what unusual sexual practice, beginning with I, this person was writing about.
Cool.
Sleeping Beauty, laid out under the gauzy veil of sleep. I feel the hall of light strike me in the chest, and I curl around it, roll away into my dreams away. Any guess what that's about yet? What unusual sexual practice beginning with I? No? And darting hungry eyes, hoping that this time the burning incandescence will fade to the cool, empty blackness. But when the light dies, it leaves a stirring in the dark that cleaves me into my dreams, breathes them into a rising, spinning life. Any guesses what unusual sexual practice beginning with I this person was writing about?
I was about to say eyelid, but no, that doesn't. That shows how tired I am.
No,
That doesn't
sorry, May.
Maybe.
The eyes unchanged, and I wish for a needle, immune to kisses, to drain me for the last time, of cursed wakefulness.
Injections?
No. It was incest. And on that note, this has been VaryingDegress, a BDSM podcast. Thank you for joining us for another episode this evening. We have been a CoolHand Ad, Sway, Side Burns, and ViolentMay. Violent, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Can I plug?
You can plug.
Please do.
Your plug. Come on, plug.
Plug. Well, if you are interested in a video or want to come to one of my shows, find me on FatLife, Instagram or Facebook. I'm ViolentMay on all of them. If you would like to come along, support my burlesque baby UntamedBurlesque, find us on Facebook. We're only on Facebook because reasons I don't know. There's too much social media. Otherwise, I've got 2 shows coming up technically 3, I guess. One is the 5th of June in Bath. The next one is 9th of July in Plymouth. And then the one after that is in December, on December 12th, I think. It's in December in Bath. Anyway, come along and watch some awesome burlesque.
Amazing. Thank you. And Burns, any final thoughts from you, buddy?
Not really. I think everything that's needed to be said has been said. Thank you for coming on, ViolentMay. It's been
thank
great.
you for having me.
Very welcome.
Hopefully you come back another time, you know, find out how things are going sort of post-pandemic and what's going on in the future. It'd be great to have you. But in the meantime, thank you to our listeners. Join us again in about another month or so if we can keep this up.